Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Virtual Voice. I'm Chris, and I'm here once again with Fernanda. Fernanda, how are you doing today?
Hey Chris. Yeah, I'm pretty good. Thank you. And
Good.
you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. I'm in, as we were discussing just now, I'm in a new office.
Yeah.
One of our previous guests, Joni Wolfswinkle, was kind enough to allow me to rent an office space in her office building. So anyway, I moved offices on Monday, and I love it. It's great. It's nice to be out of the house.
Awesome. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just congrats on the new office.
Thanks. So it's summertime. Is it warm down there like it is here? Because it's kind of nice and warm here.
Well, it depends on who you ask. For me,
I
it's
was gonna
not
say you're
warm.
wearing a sweat. You're wearing a sweater, so it's
Exactly.
like,
So, yeah, for me,
yeah,
it's not warm, but
yeah.
it's like a little bit cold. But if you ask my family, they're going to say that it's
It's
warm. So it depends.
that's all right. You're cold 24/7.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, cool. So today we're talking about, oh, that's your part. What are we talking about today, Fernanda?
Okay, yeah, no worries. So today's topic is building confidence as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, what does it mean to be a confident leader? Let's start there. Being a
Sure.
confident leader means having faith in your abilities and decisions, as well as inspiring others to do the same. It involves being able to handle challenges and being able to communicate clearly and effectively with team members.
Yeah. So, you know, people think that being confident means that you have all the answers and you portray yourself as like, oh, I know everything, but that's not the case. Confidence is really knowing what you don't know, right? And being
Yeah,
honest about it. And to be honest, like for me, it's freeing for me to tell people like, hey, I'm not good in this, or I'm not that great in this area, or I'm not sure, I don't have experience in this. Like I think I'm pretty open with the team about all that stuff. If I suck at something, I kind of let you guys know, right? But the thing is, a confident leader will bring people on that are better than they are in different areas of the business. And we could talk a little bit more about that throughout the episode, but that is confidence, right? Confidence in myself, knowing I don't know how to do this. I'm going to bring on this other person on because they're better in that area than I am. And I'm confident in myself to know that they're not a threat to me, right? And if
exactly.
anything, they're a help for me and I'm going to help them out, right? So we'll talk more about that as we go.
Yeah, so let's go to why is building confidence important for leaders. So let's go to the importance part. So first of all is on the decision making. So leaders are often required to make difficult
Mhm.
decisions that impact their team and organization. So if a leader lacks confidence in their decision making abilities, they may hesitate or delay making decisions, which can lead on the lack of progress and productivity. So it's pretty important just like to have confidence as a leader. That way you can make the right decisions in the right time. Just as Chris
Mhm.
mentioned, for example, putting the right people on the right seats and just having the confidence like, yeah, I don't know this, but this person is capable of doing it. That way we're going to be more productive and there's going to be actual progress.
Yeah. And people think that as a leader that you have to make all the decisions. Now, of course, as a leader, like for me, the CEO of our company, the bottom line stops with me, right? Like I'm responsible for anything that is happening or anything that goes on in the company. But that doesn't mean I have to make all the decisions. The decisions can come from people on the team. And we do that a lot, right? We just
Yeah,
like, okay, we got to make this decision on this thing. Let's have everyone give some input on this and let's collectively come up with a solution to the problem. There are times, yes, of course, that I will say, you know what, this is what we're going to do, just because maybe I've got a little bit more experience in certain areas. But when it comes to, let's say, for example, marketing, right? I don't know what the answer is. So I rely on you and Patrick. And, whatever decision you guys make, I'll support it and we'll just go with that. Right. So
yeah,
confidence in yourself, knowing that your team members are not a threat to you. They're not trying to take over your job or take over your company. They're there to support you and to promote and um, make the company progress and grow. So there's that part, but there's also still having ownership in the decision, even though if the decision didn't come from me. So for example, if we have a marketing decision to make, yeah, the decision is ultimately mine, but I'm going to delegate that down to you because I know you know better. You're in that all day long and you're doing it. So I'm like, okay, Fernanda knows better than I do. I'm just going to let her make the decision. But I'm delegating it, but I'm not abdicating. Abdicating is like, oh, that's your job, Fernanda. And if this is messed up, then it's your job on the line. And if anyone comes at me, I'm going to say, oh, no, you got to talk to Fernanda. That's her decision. That's not delegation, that's abdication. And as a leader, you don't abdicate, you delegate. So you have to understand the difference between the two and make sure you're delegating the decision and still taking ownership of it.
Yeah, that was really good, and it just like I really like the part of having also confidence in your team, you know, and like for
Mm-hmm.
example here on the decision making progress process, if you're doesn't have if you don't have confidence on yourself, sorry, the English just slips away when I'm in the
I,
podcast. It's
I see
just
where you're going. Go for
exactly,
it.
sorry. But yeah, when you don't have confidence in yourself, you're going to show that and you're not going to have confidence in your team. So it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I think, hand in hand. So
Right.
if you're a confident leader, you are going to be confident again that you
Mm-hmm.
have the right people, that they're going to make the right decisions. Like, for example, as you said on marketing, like, for example, there are things that I don't ask you like, hey, every single thing that I'm doing, like, hey, Chris, where should I put the image? Just right or left or something like that, you know? So
That would
I,
drive me nuts if you did that. I'm like, Fernanda, you
so
got to go. Let's bring someone else on the team.
imagine that, just like, hey,
Oh,
Chris, where should
goodness.
I put
That
the
would kill
text?
me. That would kill
But
me.
yeah, just you know where I'm going to, just
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you have confidence in me that I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
make the right decisions because I don't know, I'm having the experience with that. So it's just, if you're a confident leader, you're going to have confidence in your team. There's going to be
Mm-hmm.
progress. There's not going to be any delays, because
Mm-hmm.
imagine the time requiring that it would be just if I ask Chris everything on the website. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, I think that's the pretty important part there. So
Exactly. And just to add on to that, let's say, for example, you were the person who said, hey, Chris, what color font should I use on the website? You know, what size font should I use? And if you came to me with all those questions, and if I was the one making all those decisions, but to be honest, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm just thinking it might look good. I don't know. Um, but you, as the expert in your field, you would see that as like, oh, Chris really doesn't know what he's doing, but he wants to make all these decisions. You are going to see he's not really confident. He's really showing me his insecurities.
yeah.
And, you know, those insecurities come just because I'm pretending like I know everything and I know the right thing for marketing or sales or whatever it might be. You knowing what you're doing and you're the expert on our team for marketing, you're going to see right through that. And you're like, oh, Chris is really insecure. He's not a confident leader. So I think me telling you, hey, Fernanda, I don't know. I know you know so much better than more than I do on this area. You go ahead and make the decision, and I'm happy with whatever you decide. I think you see more confidence in me, and me having confidence in you. Does that make sense? It kind of
Yeah, makes
we're
sense.
it's mutual confidence there in each other, where you're like, okay, Chris isn't insecure in himself to where he feels like he needs to be the expert in everything and the all-knowing CEO. So I think that's something that people need to be careful of.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, let's go to the next one. So,
Mm-hmm.
taking risks. So, leaders also need to take calculated risks to move their organization forward. So, if a leader lacks confidence in their ability to assess and manage risk, they may avoid taking risks altogether, which can result in missed opportunities and a lack of innovation. So, that's just going in hand also with the decision making, but I think this is pretty important because sometimes as a leader, you have to be the person that stands out and say, like, let's take this risk. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it can be good, it can be bad, like we doesn't know, but you just have to have the right motivation to go after those things. So
Right.
if you are uncertain, like I don't know if I should take that risk and everything, you can miss really good opportunities. And I think we've been in that place like a lot on Elevation where you take the risk, Chris, and it's the
Hmm.
right move. So
Well, thanks, but not all the time.
well, most
um,
of the time, so that's good.
well, yeah. So I've got I'll talk about that here in a second about the risks that we take. Really, if your company or we as people are not taking risks often, then we're not moving forward. And if we're
Yeah.
not moving forward, then we're dying. Like there's no, we talked about this, I think, in another episode. Is if you're not growing anything in your garden, you're going to get weeds, right? So if you have no production, yet you're not moving forward, there's no momentum, then weeds are going to grow, and you're just going to slowly die away. So we all need to take risks, whether it be big or small. And if not, then growth is not going to happen. But my thought is, as it relates to the company, you get the team involved in taking the risk. And the way you do that is just you use the team in their areas of specialty and have them provide their input, whether it be data or data supported by their professional opinion of what we should do. Some people on the team have experience in doing things that we're trying to move towards. So we're relying on their experience and lessons learned and best practices. So, a couple of examples, and this was like early on when you first started working with us, where we took on a 16 unit complex for the property management side, and the owner was asking us questions about locks for the doors. And you remember this?
Yeah. It's the
Yeah.
document that
So,
I did for the spreadsheet and everything.
yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think at the time you were going back and forth on what you wanted to specialize in college.
Oh yeah.
And so we're like, all right, Fernando, you're considering going into the finance world. Let do this experiment. If we were to invest money into buying these locks, and we added a charge to the tenants for the special locks, for the technology fee or whatever it might be, how long would it take for us to break even? And then we would use that data to determine whether or not it's a wise investment. And it took, I don't know, maybe it took you a couple of days to come up with that spreadsheet or whatever it might be. And then we took that data and like, okay, I see the data. Um, Tell me what you think, Fernanda. And you told me what you thought. And we decided right there, nope, this is not a wise decision. We're not doing that. So even though your work didn't produce revenue producing, decisions, your data and your research and the work you put into it prevented us from investing in something that was not going to make us any money,
Exactly.
you know? And so that was something where I delegated to you, even though I took full ownership of the decision. I delegated down to you. You came up with the data. You gave me your opinion, and we went with that. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's just you thought I was going to talk. Sorry, Chris. But yeah,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think on that part is also, for example, taking the risks, but
Hmm.
not just saying like, let's do it, you know, like
Right.
having something like some research before and everything is just like it's pretty important. Just as you said in this decision, like you said, uh, okay, so let's see, are we taking this risk or not? Okay, so these
Yep.
are the reasons why we are not taking the risk, and these are the
Hmm.
advantages of taking it. So I think that sometimes as leaders we can be just like, okay, so I'll take it. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to think of the consequences, or I'm not going to think of what can go wrong, only what can do go right, and that's it. And then like sometimes we can be like, oh my god, that wasn't the right decision and everything, because we didn't do enough research, we didn't have the
Hmm.
confidence on the decision. We're just like, let's see how that goes, you know.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So calculated risks, right? You
Exactly.
have data to support your decision. And one other thing that we worked on over last summer. So we were already in the position where we were selling the property management company, focusing more on construction, and we're moving operations into Houston. We had this opportunity presented to us on whether or not we wanted to take over a property management team locally here in Houston. And so I'm like, it's tempting because there's already a team in place. They already have systems in place that we need to fix, but it's still something. They have a foundation there.
Yeah.
And I met the team and I'm like, wow, these people are really cool. I think they would fit really good in our culture with what we have. So I had Liz on our team. She's our finance person on our team. I had her do some scenarios. I'm like, okay, let's say we charge this amount. We have these fees to the owners. And I got the salary for all of the people on the team. I said, okay, and these are the salaries. How much money would we make? How long would it take us to break even? How much time would it take before us to start making a profit? And it looked okay,
Mhm.
but there were so many factors that had to, like, okay, it would work out, but this needs to happen and this needs to happen and this needs to happen. And there was just too many variables in there that were like, okay, well, we don't have enough information from the other end, the seller,
Yeah.
to allow us to feel confident in our decision. So we made the decision, okay, we're not going to do this. And we had confidence in that, right? We drew the line like, all right, we're not doing it because we have data supporting our decision. And I think that was a really, at the time, before we had the data, I was excited, like, oh, here, another company we can start, right? But after we got the data, I'm like, oh boy, I'm glad we did the research because now I have the confidence, of saying no. So calculated risks, take risks, but make sure you have data to support them.
Exactly. Wow, that was really good. And I think it's just it can be also here the part of the virtual team also that you took the risk just to hire your first remote employee there. And
Yeah.
now we have like all the team that is remote. So
It's funny
that's
because, like, I remember how nervous I was when I first hired our first remote team member.
yeah.
And we did so many interviews. We're like, oh gosh, we're not sure. And then, our first one, we thought she was great, but we're still like, oh, you're nervous because it's your
Yeah.
first one. We're like, all right, let's just pull the trigger and let's do it. And after we did the first hire, I think within the next 6 months or so, we hired like 7 or 8 more remote team members, right? To the
Yeah.
point now where, like, if I need to hire someone, I'm just going to go remote team workers because that's what I know. Like, we've already proven that time and again that we've done it pretty well. I am nervous about hiring local people, because there's a lot more to it. You have, state laws, you have HR things you got to follow. And so those I'm not really feeling all that confident in. So whenever we make those decisions, there's a lot of people I need to talk to first before I pull the trigger. I mean, we've had a few local hires, um, and I talked to the right people. Um, but yeah, I'm more comfortable with a remote team member than I am local hires.
Yeah, but that was a good, just like I think a good example on taking risks and like those risks were uh I don't know, in the path of something good, like
Yeah,
so
yeah. You
that's
take
good.
those risks, you run the numbers, you make the hire, then you monitor the numbers, right?
Yeah.
So for example, we had a maintenance guy and we're like, okay, if we did in-house maintenance, it would work out, because we would be able to bring in more revenue. Well, we're tracking how many billable hours did he work, how much is his pay costing us, all the other things, sick days and HR issues. Was it worth our time? And what we found was, like, okay, we were breaking even. Maybe sometimes we make some money, but all the issues that came along with having a, you know, in-house maintenance team just was not worth the amount of money we were making. So we ended that plan right there. So, you make your calculated risk, but after you make the decision, you got to keep measuring to make sure that it's in line with what your data was telling you before you made the decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. That it's working, just like that
Mm-hmm.
that risk is still working. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, let's go to the next one. So inspiring and motivating teams. So
Mm-hmm.
leaders need to inspire and motivate their teams to achieve common goals. So if a leader lacks confidence, they may struggle to communicate their vision or inspire their team members to take on new challenges. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, in this part, I would say I really identify with the training part that we
Mm-hmm.
do. Like, for
Yep.
example, just being vulnerable, like on those trainings, like normally for example, you need to be Chris, the one that tells the examples and everything, like in the questions that we have. But
Yeah.
like that's confidence, you know. And I see, like from my part on the team, that when we
Hmm.
start with the questions, some of them are really personal. No, like for example, I don't know what are some challenges in your life, and no one wants to talk about that. But you are confident about, like, okay, so I'll let you know, and I'm going to be vulnerable, team, like with you
Hmm.
and everything. So just seeing that, I see that the team also gets the confidence to speak and say,
Yep.
like, okay, so these are the things that I'm struggling with. So just having a confident leader,
Hmm.
it's going to let your team also to have confidence in themselves and also to be inspired
Hmm.
by the leader. And I think that happens a lot when you get the messages, Chris, that, oh, that training was really good, it really
Yeah.
inspired me and everything. It's just because, like for example, here in this case, like you talk, you speak, and you show the team that you're vulnerable.
Hmm.
So I think that's pretty important, just that part, more on the personal, not that business related, but more in the personal and psychological part. It's
Yeah.
pretty important just to be a confident leader for your team.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I learned this just from, before I started my entrepreneur journey. I worked at a church, and the church, we had like childcare centers, a school, and, we had property in the Dominican Republic where I went down there often and checked on the property and stuff. And with that, we had like weekly small groups where we would get together, we would talk about, different things. We would help each other out. Like we called it doing life together. And what I found, like I would say as I grew up, I never was really open about, I'm struggling with these negative thoughts, or I'm struggling with imposter syndrome. I have to come across as somebody who knows everything, right? Even in the military, my young military days when I wanted to become a leader, my idea of a leader was I have to come across as I know everything, and I have to treat like I have to talk down to people to make them feel
Yeah.
like I'm up here and they're down there. And as I and to be honest, when I went through that stage, I didn't feel comfortable at all. I'm like, I really don't like this person who I am. Right. So as I gotten older and I changed, anyway, kind of a long story here to prove a point. But I took those experience with the small group that we had where we met every week. We talked about different topics. And that's pretty much the model we have in our company when we do our monthly training. So for example, we talk about imposter syndrome, or Craig Rochelle's, he talks a lot about leading yourself and the thoughts in your mind. And so there's always like, oh gosh, should I really say that I'm struggling with imposter syndrome? Nobody on that team is like, do I want to say this in front of my boss? Right.
Yeah.
But if I come across and say, hey, I've got imposter syndrome, these are the thoughts that come through my mind before I start this training, you know, like before we turn the Zoom on, like even before like this Zoom, like, oh my gosh. All right. Do people really want to listen to what I have to say? Do I really have something like, do I have wisdom to share with people? Right. Those thoughts come to my mind. And if I'm open about those things, the team is going to open up and share.
Yeah.
So, and then one other example, it's, when we're going through our notes here, the thing that came to my mind was when a couple months ago when we did what are our goals for 2023, and I had a presentation. We met together as a team, and I put a lot of time into it because my goal was I don't want to waste anyone's time, and I want everyone to be on the same page of where we want to go this year as a company.
Yeah.
And before we started that Zoom, I was nervous. I'm like, gosh, people are think this is stupid. I think they're probably going to think this is a waste of their time. And I'll tell you, like, after that, I mean, it was a 45-minute presentation. I was worried that, oh my gosh, I talked too much. Maybe I spent too much time on a point like I am right now, you know? And then, so after that, people were like, hey, Chris, I'm really excited about this coming year. This is really great. I love where we're going as a company. And, so I guess maybe my point is that um, if I allow those imposter thoughts, negative thoughts to rule how I act, I'm not going to come across as a confident person, you know. be in touch with your why, be in touch with your vision, communicate that, let your team know what it is, be honest with your struggles. And then the team is going to respond. They're going to like, this is great because I struggle with the same things, or this is
Yeah.
great because I love where we're going, right? That open and honest communication that goes both ways goes a long way for the team.
Yeah, exactly. And I think something really important there that I know you mentioned is just having the like having the difference between confidence and having a big ego, you know? Like for
Mm-hmm.
example, sometimes you can be like, "Oh yeah, I'm a confident leader. Like I feel like here in the top of the mountain and everyone's just down."
Yeah,
And like and that's not confidence, you know, that's just having a big ego. So
right.
being a confident leader is just having confidence in your team, but also having confidence, as Chris said, that you don't know everything. And for example, there are going to be people on your team that may know more about some topic and everything, and being open to learn, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important. And I think in Elevation, like we do that often. Like, for example, you ask us, Chris, like, but what I don't know, like what that means, or just like, can you explain me this about marketing and everything? So you're like really open to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not like, okay, so I'm the CEO and that's it, you know, like I don't need you to explain me anything because I know everything. So I think that's a pretty I don't know, like a straight a line that we need to mark there, just like between confidence
Mm-hmm.
and also just having a big ego, because sometimes we
Exactly.
can just like we don't see the difference, and you can go to that path and it's not the right path.
Exactly. My thought is if you don't know, you don't know, and be honest about it. Because if
Exactly.
you're not honest about it, there's ego. If you're honest about it, that's confidence in yourself.
Exactly, that's good. So yeah, let's go to the last one on the importance of um,
Mm-hmm.
being building confidence as a leader. So it's
Yeah.
managing change. So change is a constant in most organizations. So leaders need to be able to manage change effectively. If a leader lacks of confidence in their ability to manage change, they may resist or struggle to adapt to new circumstances. I think that's just pretty important because business like are always changing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not like there's going to be issues everywhere. And like for
Mm-hmm.
example, there are going to be days that you're going to be so stressed, and if you don't manage that change, if you don't know how
Mm-hmm.
to manage that change, like you're just going to go bankrupt or something, because like that from what I saw in my experience, like
uh,
sometimes we've been on situations that we're so stressed, and like for example, I see, Chris, that you're like, okay, so let's think I don't know, with the head cold and see what are we where can we work on this or something. So
mm-hmm.
I think it's
Yeah.
pretty important just knowing that the business, there's going to be times that there are going to be like good situations and everything, and you're going to be like, I'm getting all this money and everything is working fine.
Right.
But like maybe the next day it's not going to be like that. You're going to have like this bunch of issues, calling people, calling and complaining. So you
Mm-hmm.
need to adapt to those changes.
Exactly. Yeah. So the one thing that comes to mind in regards to managing change, remember that video with Jocko where I think the title of the video is called Good.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah, so, one of his subordinates comes up to him and says, "Hey, I've got this going on in my life." His response is always good, and then the kid comes back later on with another problem. He goes, "Yeah, I've got a problem, but if I tell you, I know what you're going to say. But what am I going to say? You're going to say good." And that's true. It's like, okay, good. You didn't get the promotion. Good. It's an opportunity for you to prove yourself. You didn't make the team. Good. It's an opportunity for you to train harder and get better. Right. So that's the mentality I try to make. Like, we're not perfect, of course. I mean, you were my assistant for a couple of years, and you know that I say a few things before I say good, you know, when things happen. But the thing that's constant in everything in life, business, whatever, it's always change. Change is always going to happen. So right now we're going through an economic change in the country and the world where people are a little afraid to spend money. And what does that mean? Well, small businesses suffer from that. and we're in construction, so we do see some signs of a slowdown.
Yeah, totally.
So what is our attitude? Are we going to crawl under a rock and cry about it? Well, that's not going to get us anywhere. That's just going to, like what you were saying earlier, it's going to make us go bankrupt and go out of business, right? So what do we do? Well, okay, let's study what happened last time the market did this. What did successful companies do? Let's study that and let's make those changes. What did we learn? What did we learn from other companies in 2008 when the market crashed then and things were really bad? Well, we learned that companies who cut in marketing did very poorly and some went out of business, but those companies who spent more money in marketing thrived during the crash. And you look back, forward 10 years from that time, and they were doing 4 times better than the other companies who didn't spend any extra money in marketing. So we take that data and we're like, oh, okay, cool. So we need to implement the same thing in ours. Marketing is the lifeblood of your company. So why are you going to cut it off? Right.
Yeah.
So things like that, you have to see what happens. You have to have that mentality of like, oh, okay, a key person in the team quit. Okay, good. There's an opportunity to bring on someone new that maybe they might be better. And maybe there might be a better fit for us, you know? So that's the mentality that we need to have as leaders. It shows confidence, not just our own ability, but our team's ability to adapt to the
Yeah.
situation, whatever it might be. So, I know that with the team that we have, if something were to happen where, I don't know, things slowed down for a little bit, I can gather the team together and I know that the team would come up with some great ideas of, okay, this is what we need to do going forward and let's make it happen. Right. So managing change through confidence, not just in yourself, but your team.
Yeah, exactly. Just seeing opportunities where in hard times. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yep, exactly.
yeah. So let's go to the next part of the podcast. So, what are some common challenges leaders face when it comes to building confidence? So first, we have already an episode of this. So it's imposter
Mm-hmm.
syndrome. So this is
Right.
something that a lot of leaders suffer from, and not well, like we all are leaders. So yeah, I also struggle from imposter syndrome, and I know you
Right.
do, Chris. So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah, this is a common feeling among leaders where they doubt their own abilities and feel like they're not good enough for the job, they're not good enough for the position, or just like anything. So this can lead to a lack of confidence and reluctance to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like Fernanda said, we talked about this before in an episode. We all deal with it. Some leaders allow that negative voice in their head to take over, and they tell themselves their story that, the story that they tell themselves is in a negative place. When that happens, it just drains the confidence in the person. So what do we need to do? We need to do our best to ignore those and fill our mind with affirmations and positivity. And this helps quiet that voice, that negative voice down. It doesn't, I mean, that negative voice is always going to be there. It's always going to pop up. It's going to pop up when you're tired. It's going to pop up when something bad happens. It's going to pop up when you see your finances and you didn't hit your goals and you're like, oh crap, we're going out of business. Right. And then
Yeah.
it just spirals down from there. So the voice is always going to be there. Just know that, recognize it, and respect it, but also know how to defeat it by ignoring it and filling your mind with positive thoughts and affirmations. Um, Listen to our other episode. We have a lot more on that. Um, there's a great book by Chris Kelso about imposter syndrome that I recommend everyone to read. That's an excellent book. Maybe one day we can have him as a guest on our podcast. But yeah, we won't go too far into the imposter syndrome because we have probably like an hour episode on that, right?
Yeah, I think it was like a
Yeah.
1 hour episode. So yeah, if you want
Yeah.
to know more about this, go to the
Hmm.
other episode. That was good.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, let's go to the next one that we have. So it's fear of failure. So
Hmm.
leaders often have to make difficult decisions and take calculated risk, which can be scary. Fear of failure can hold leaders back and make them hesitant to take action. So this also goes along with the um, taking risks. So yeah, for example, it's just like I think most of the leaders struggle with this. And yeah, I've struggled with this too. Just like you
Mhm.
don't want to take those decisions that you know that they can be good, they can make a difference in the company or
Mhm.
wherever. But you're like, what if I fail? Like, I'm not going to do that because what if I fail? I'm going to be a disappointment. Everyone is
Right.
going to think that I screwed up everything. So, like in those situations, you really have to be confident on the decision, taking, as we mentioned, calculated risks. That way, there's going to be the best decision. And if it doesn't get like the results that you wanted, at least you're going to learn something out from it, you know?
Right.
So
Mhm.
that way it doesn't happen again. But yeah.
Yeah. My favorite pastor and author right now is Erwin McManus. I may have mentioned him a time or two. I think we've done some. Have we done training on Erwin McManus? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
No. We talk about Craig Rochelle a lot. Erwin McManus, and Craig Rochelle. I think they know each other. They're in their leadership world and stuff together. But something that Erwin says often is, your future's on the other side of your failures, or your fear. He says fear of failure. So we're talking about fear here. So your future is on the other side of fear. So, just an example in my own life, I've always wanted to be a company owner, and I always wanted to have my own team. I always wanted to have the opportunity to create a culture in my team where what we're doing right now, like the things that we do now as a team and our culture is things that I've thought about and daydreamed about years ago and wanted to do, but I was always afraid, gosh, I can't do it. Like, I've never had a company before. How do I run a business? I was in the military. Yeah, okay, maybe I can lead, but I don't know anything about sales. I don't know anything about marketing. Um, and to be honest, I've never built a house myself. So why am I in the construction world? I remember doing a little drywall in my house before, but that's about it. So, there's a fear there. And so I just decided that, you know what? I it, so Erwin McManus was also saying, if you're afraid to do something, if your desire is to do something and you have a fear behind it, you have to listen to that, because, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that there's a there's a devil out there who doesn't want you to achieve your best self. And the devil's is like keeping you from being the best version of you, to accomplish your goal and your mission in life, to do whatever it is, whatever good there is. And so that fear is going to block you. And so, yeah, I had the fear of failure, but I was like, you know what? I'm afraid of achieving the thing that I'm desiring. So that means on the other side of that fear, there's something good,
Yeah.
right? Ignore the fear, go through it. It's going to be hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But we've got 9 team members. We have a pretty good culture. We have a great chemistry in our team. We enjoy coming to work. We enjoy working together, and we're doing great things together. And because I ignored that fear, I achieved what I wanted to do. And now that I'm here, I'm like, okay, there's a lot more things I want to do, right? Like, we want to
Yeah.
get bigger. We have certain revenue goals. We have, different markets we want to hit. And not just for me, like, for example, like, I want to get to a point where I can have people like Fernanda, you come up and I get you exposed to going to events and doing other things that are business related. So it helps you develop your business life and professional life, and, for other team members as well. So anyway, that's a long story, but we all have that fear of failure. But my thought behind this is, if your desire is there and you're afraid, have the confidence in yourself that you can get through it. Yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but those are lessons learned. You're probably going to spend some money that maybe you wish you didn't, but I call those tuition payments. So just realize that that's going to happen as you go towards what you want.
Yeah, exactly. That was really good. And it's just like I can relate to that fear of failure because like for example, just working virtually, like I've told some of my friends like, hey, you should apply, like, I don't know, check on the website pages, like for example, BPM and everything, just see
Mm,
maybe you can get an interview and everything, and they're like, I don't know, it's just I'm scared. Like, I don't know if my English is good, or I don't have the experience. So it's just like it brings me back when I was just applying for the job for being your assistant, that I was so afraid, like so
Hmm.
afraid. Like I remember that I was sweating while we were on the interview,
Yeah.
and I started working, and I was so afraid also to fail, like for example with emails or with calls. And
Hmm.
those are like little examples, but that's my point. Like for example, like fear of failure, it doesn't have to be like, oh, losing a company or something. It can be just like those small things, like for example having a phone call and you are afraid that the customer is going to be angry at you, so you don't want to take the phone call. So that was me, just like being so afraid of replying to emails or something, because that's like I don't have the experience to do it, so
Hmm.
why am I doing this? So it's just as Chris mentioned, just taking that, letting those negative thoughts go out from your mind, and doesn't think about those. Like think about the good things that you have on yourself, and be confident that you're going to do a good job and everything. So
Hmm.
I think that really helped me, and that's what I always tell my friends or people that apply to a job is like, hey, just be confident in yourself, confidence in your skills, and you're going to do great. But like for example, don't lie or don't be afraid of what are they going to think of me, you know? So
Hmm.
yeah, I think that that's very important. And I don't know, everyone can relate to the fear of failure, but that's something
Yeah.
that we need to just keep out from our minds.
Well,
And
recognize that it's there
well,
and
yeah,
know that, recognize it's there. Of course, like what we were talking about earlier, ignore it.
exactly.
It's there. I'm ignoring it because this is what I want to do. Let's say, for example, like you mentioned the job interview you had with me. You were afraid. You're unsure if you can do these certain things, right?
Exactly.
And let's say before that interview, you decided, you know what, I don't think I can do it, so I'm going to decline the interview. Well, you just basically made my decision for me. You know, the decision to hire you is my decision, you know? So why don't you just go through the interview, do the best you can, have confidence, like, you know what, I'm pretty good, but if he doesn't think so, that's okay. Someone else will, right? Don't make that decision for other people. Let them make their own decision. And if they say no, that means there's somebody else out there for you. There's another job out there. There's another position for you, right? Don't make that decision for other people.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that was Instagram worthy, Chris. So yeah, I really like that. But yeah, you're right. It's just don't make decisions for other people. And
Exactly.
yeah, let's go to the last one that we have. It's just
Hmm.
balancing priorities. Leaders have a lot on their plate, and it can be challenging to balance competing priorities. So
Yeah.
this can lead to stress and anxiety, which can impact their confidence and decision making ability.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like most leaders, well, CEOs struggle with this one, just like
Hmm.
balancing priorities. Like you want to be working all day long, and you have all these things that you need to do. Like I don't
Hmm.
know, sometimes it can be too much, and it can
Yep.
also impact your confidence, as we mentioned. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I look at this as, in two ways. One, as someone who's in charge of people and you have responsibilities, like, for example, for me, right? Balancing priorities. We have a lot of priorities,
yeah,
like a lot of things that are very important. So, how do you balance that? Well, okay, you create departments within your company. If you have people in those departments, you delegate those down to whoever it is. If it's something where you don't have anyone on your team to do, then you really should have an assistant, right? So when you were in my assistant, whatever I was doing, essentially you were doing, right? So I had, I don't know, let's just say I had meetings all day long, but I had all these things that needed to get done. Well, you were doing all these things on my to-do list while I was at my meetings, right?
yeah,
So things were being done and both were priorities. I was just able to delegate that down to someone I knew can do the job for me. So that's looking at it from someone who's in charge of a company, a department, division, whatever it might be. Now, looking at it as someone who works for somebody else, sometimes you might have a boss who might say, I need you to do all these things, but they're not really understanding your workload. And they're expecting, and I think I probably have done this for you, Fernando, where I'm like, do all these things. And then I ask you 5 minutes later, hey, where are you at? Or did you get this? And you're like, no, I'm working on these other things. Right. So that communication, what I learned in the military was whenever I met with my boss, one of my first questions is, what are your priorities? Tell me what your priorities are, and I'm going to match my priorities up with that. Right. And I tell you what, you're in the military and you go to your boss and say, sir or ma'am, what are your priorities? And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We're going to work so well together. They love that. And, and if they don't have their priorities, then shame on them. But they should be able to tell you the priorities. And you can work, it doesn't have to be the military. You can do this in any job. What are your priorities as it relates to my position, right?
Yeah.
For you, right? Marketing. Chris, what are your priorities? Well, I want leads. I want this. I want this. I want a good website, blah, blah, blah. Okay. You know my priorities. So whenever there's tasks that come up that are extra outside of those priorities, then you can go back and say, okay, boss, your priorities are the website. You want leads coming in, in social media. But you also have me doing all the flyers and stuff. Like, we have this event coming up. What do you want me to do? My thought is we do this because this event's coming up. So I'm going to do these before I do the website. What are your thoughts? Oh, yeah, that's great. Go ahead and do that first. Right. So you're helping lead up, you're leading your boss and telling them, hey, everything is a priority, but here's deadlines. And here's how I see it. Here's my recommendation. And that helps your boss feel confident in you, confident in knowing that the mission is going to be accomplished. And then we don't feel so overwhelmed because we have a plan in
Yeah.
place, right? So those are the ways that I kind of respond to the overwhelming everything is a priority thing. Yeah, I mean everyone can get overwhelmed. I do too. And I tell you too, right? When you were my assistant, Fernanda, feeling overwhelmed, and we're
Yeah.
like, okay, let's take a step back. Jocko talks about this. Detach, gather information. Once you feel confident and you know what the picture of the battlefield and the environment, what's going on, then get back into the fight. And so, we do that together. And when you were my assistant, we did that together, even in marketing, right? So we just kind of like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's look at what we have to do. Let's come up with our priority list and let's start making tasks from there. So it's just a couple ways of handling the priority issue.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. Like for example, also on the marketing. And I think it happened a lot when I was your assistant, as you mentioned, just me saying
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, Chris, I'll do it. Yes, Chris, I'll do it. And this,
Yeah.
I have this huge list of things that I need to do. And like I'm doing everything at once, but not just like everything, but anything like, I don't
Yeah.
know. And you were like, Fernanda, did you do this? I was like, no, I was working in this other task. And you were like, wow, that was for next week. We need this right now. So it's just like
Mm-hmm.
I learned also, hey Chris, like, is this time sensitive? And I think I did that for marketing for the flyers, just like, hey Chris,
Yeah.
like when do you need this? Like let me know,
Mm-hmm.
that way we can have it, because we have all these things that also are piling up. So I need to start working on those things. So what is the priority here? So
Yeah.
I think it's pretty important, as you said, just to lead up and say, okay, so what are we going to do first and everything. That way
Mm-hmm.
there's actual progress and there's isn't any delay or, for
Mm-hmm.
example, miscommunication. And that's going to generate stress if you're not communicating well your priorities as a leader. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
And if you're, yeah,
sorry.
if you're a leader and, just the example that Fernando was talking about, with the marketing, you come up with like, hey, I'm going to do this first, and then I'm going to attack these other things because this is a priority. And, I've been saying this a lot lately. I'm like, okay, I'll follow your lead on this one, Fernanda. You know what's going on. You make a decision, and I'll follow you on this one, right? So, and then there's a lot of things like in my personal social media that you do, like Fernanda, just you tell me what you want me to do, and the things that you need me to do, and then I'll get it done, right?
Yeah.
So just being able to delegate your priorities down to your team, and then allow your team to lead you as a leader and
Exactly.
follow them, empower them, make them feel like, okay, I've got ownership and my boss trusts me. So just some lessons that I've learned along the way, I guess.
Yeah, that was really good. So yeah, I think that's it for
Yeah.
today's episode. So it was good. We're going to have a part two where we're going to go over how can leaders identify their strengths, set
Hmm.
achievable goals, and how can leaders learn from failure. So just uh I don't know, just be waiting for the next episodes. They're going to be great.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
I don't know if you have something that you want to say, Chris, before we
No, I think
end.
that's good. I mean, I think today was a good episode. We did talk about some things that we did have topics on prior episodes, like the imposter syndrome and stuff. And, just I think the biggest lesson that I want people to know and that I have to remind myself a lot is being confident doesn't mean you know everything. Being confident also means you're confident in the things that you don't know,
Yeah.
right? And then in those opportunities, I'm able to be confident in my team because what I don't know, they know and they can do for me or for the company anyway. So confidence is knowing what you know and also knowing what you're not good at and what you don't know.
That was good. Yeah. So, yeah, just thank you, everyone. And thank you, Chris, just for this
Thank you.
episode. Hope everyone likes it. So, yeah, take care and stay virtual. Thank you.